until I'm done. Cough.
Okay, the squad is
Don't
back.
worry, don't worry.
No,
Don't
I'm gonna
worry.
mute you.
Giving me the option.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I don't edit the stuff. So if you edit it, you have to download it, clip it, and so this is all going up. Yeah, the squad is back.
that's all right.
Yeah.
If anyone judges me for coffee and virtue is unteachable,
Yes.
they are
Okay, that's the direction that
write
we're
that down.
going.
Write that down.
Did you read the paper, Sipo?
Of course not. Of course not. I read the summary you said. Though it's been a busy Christmas, my guy. Been a busy
Okay.
Christmas. Kids have been on my neck. Girlfriend on my neck.
Abuele's nieces.
Niece and nephew.
Abuele's, not yours.
Yeah, yeah, really. No,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay. Hadley's joining us from Georgia. It's cold for him there. He's the well, this is going on to the Holy Cow. So we've had two series this year. Can virtue be taught, and can being be known? We jumped into the beginning of Hegel's phenomenology, and for can virtue be taught, we were doing some Platonic dialogues, and the whole time we have the sense that just recording the process is valuable, and we are pointing towards the activity of it, and in endeavoring to get better ourselves at that activity, and also keeping alive between us that mutual process and project of inquiry. So what this space is and can be is a space where we report back. It's been a little while since we've been in touch, but it's also an opportunity at the end of the year to reflect back on what's happened. For me, what comes out of that, the inquiry into whether virtue can be taught, is that appropriate opposition, and that has really sustained my year in thinking of philosophical practice. Um, we had a paper before us today that Sipo didn't read. Um, the truth is that which is after the truth, or is that which runs after the truth, which is a quote from Lacan. So whatever happens now, we might be informed by that paper, but we are gathering again the material before us so that we can strike up a um, dialogos, but I almost wanted to avoid that word. So let me start with the quotes, and it'll be appropriate because it's Holy Cow. And someone commented this. This is how I got this paper because someone, the Knight of the World, commented this on a video. It is this conception of truth as a whole, in the very fabric of knowledge, as that which can never be symbolized, that serves as the basis for a notion of certainty other than that advanced by science. So it's this nothing that is always placed within a system. It's placing something unplaceable in our language or speech. In the context of can being be known, that might have been being between us, Hadley, one way to think about it. And then in the context of can virtue be taught, um, it might have been the truth of virtue. So that's what we're going to move towards. Are there any senses of direction? Not Sipo first, because he hasn't done the reading. So Abuyili
I'm
or
just here
Hadley.
to listen.
I don't know if I have anything intelligent to say necessarily. It seems like that placing of the implaceable, this whatever makes science possible, is just a very Kantian problem, the real as something that pervades science. Um, and I'm not sure of the way in which we go about solving it in this paper through introducing the psychological subject as sort of a locus for the real. Um,
Ah,
Because traditionally, that's precisely the type of thing that makes speech possible, but which cannot be spoken about, and which I guess ought not be spoken about.
Expand on that last bit. It's like AI.
Do I need to add more? Yes. So, like for Kant, right, the transcendental subject makes possible all of these modes of experience. It provides the conditions for the possibility of experience, and the real is the content of perception that we anticipate. We know that there's some sort of intensity to perception in Kant, and that's what we can know prior to there being experience, and that's what we formalize the real in. So the transcendental subject, whatever it is, that thing which conditions experience, is the determiner of experience. But just insofar as it's determining, we can't speak about it, because to speak about it would be to say to make a category error. What we can speak about is the stuff in experience, not the experiencer, so to speak.
Yeah. To speak about it, we determine it in some way. And so that's where having these concepts or these ideas that are dialectical, I think is the word, that it has a place within our thinking, within our speech, within, say, the system or how we're symbolizing things.
Mhm.
But what gets placed is something that is unplaceable, or it's so like the idea of being and subject, and we've been kind of loosely pointing to dialectical things, but it's like it's this thing that we notice we notice it first within a system, it's placed within a system, and then when we come to kind of consider or contemplate its contradiction, then it does something to that system in that we realize that it's it's there, but it's also unplaceable. It can't be there somehow, or it shouldn't be there somehow. So the one that you were bringing out now is this way in which if the subject determines, and then you determine through speech something about the subject, then you've lost the subject because you've determined the yeah. That's a potent beginning. That's a Yeah, Avile and Sipo, what are your thoughts? Are you there with us?
No, I'm processing what you guys are saying. I'm processing what you guys are saying. In a way, I get what Headley is saying, but when you have an inkling to it's almost like something. It's almost like I'm not fully convinced that we can't say anything about the experience, but I don't know why I'm not fully convinced.
I wonder if so my thoughts when reading this paper was wondering about the trying to speak of the whatever the evasiveness is. Like he's found all these dialectical ways to put it. The truth runs after the truth. It's that which escapes science. It's the unsymbolizable or whatever. But the problem seems to be, at least to me, something between like a static conception of knowledge, something where we know that X is the case or something like that, versus like an active conception where like knowing is a state of being. It's not necessarily like grasping some truth, but it's a sort of performative state, like a craftsperson or something like that.
Hmm.
So like knowing that versus know how.
Hmm.
Mm. That it concurs with that the reading of the one that this author uses is like distinguishing understanding as to, I think he uses the word like trying, or Is it not trying or trusting? Trusting versus understanding. And like if we're applying the sense of needing to understand the thing before you can move forward, then we never enter the mode that is going to prevail us to, he's saying, psychoanalytic truth. But like, so it's like he uses a metaphor of swimming. Like you can understand what swimming is, and then there's swimming, and there's something like a trust that gets the process going. So there's interesting stuff around that, like that initial, it's spoken about as transference, that initial, you need to trust that you can come to understand in order to begin to try to understand. So you like project, or you transfer this idea that you can receive as knowledge or an understanding in order to get the process going, where then it comes back to this idea that the knowing in this sense is the undergoing, or is the doing, is the trying, is the trusting. And there's something like inherently living, unset, or never final, never concluding about that. But he's saying that if we can find a peculiar kind of certainty in that very space, in or process, that I mean, we don't have to really choose his deadlock, but his deadlock is thinking, or context at least, is thinking adult education, and trying to get it away from like a post-structural, postmodern, we can't be certain about anything, and language is indeterminate, and then the scientific, like science is the way you get certainty. He's trying to break the deadlock between those two, and it's, for him, you find the certainty in truth as that which is after truth. So like this process kind of thing. Avuyile, how are you doing there?
I'm happy.
Are you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So far, I am like people here. Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy, but okay.
You're not. I'm happy you're not happy.
I'm also unhappy.
Hadley, you're unhappy. You called it. Maybe I can like a quote, um, a quote and it's a joke. So to truly know, to truly understand, or to truly learn something, we have to be willing to give up, or at least bracket, our conventional notions of knowledge, understanding, and learning. This, of course, means the adult educator looking to learn Lacanian psychoanalysis in this instance, to understand it, may well find himself in the unenviable but comical position of a character in a well-known joke of the traveler who asks for directions and is told, "You can't get there from here." So the Lacanian point is that we cannot get there to a true understanding from here, a conventional notion of understanding. And this is why trust, or as it is known in psychoanalysis, transference, not understanding, is the key to true learning. So I was just thinking there in terms of what we were looking into previously in terms of appropriate opposition. Like maybe those two things might be interesting to put together, like how to put trust and appropriate opposition at play together. That might provoke like a direction.
What you just said, this joke, is exactly why I'm unhappy. Exactly why I'm unhappy, because I don't. It doesn't make sense how it seems that we're supposed to progress from something that seems unprogressible. So like I'm hearing this suggestion, but maybe I've been brainwashed. I don't know. But like I don't know how not understanding is gonna benefit, how a lack of understanding is gonna benefit my learning.
Maybe it's sort of like something like what Socrates does in the Meno. Right? We're trying to not perplexity is our friend here, right? I'm trying to get you to a sort of shattering of what you think is there, right? In order to come to something else. Now, trusting is knowing everything is sort of moving
Mm-hmm.
and then moving forward. And I don't know if I'm making any sense.
I think you are, and I think that's still the reason why I'm upset. So I really enjoy the Meno, and I really enjoy the ability to, break the molds and like let go of assumptions in sort of helping us to understand, right? What's blocking Meno is his sort of assumption that he knows what knowledge is, or what's blocking the slave is that he pretends to know what the mathematical diagonal is, or whatever, or how to work out the double of the square, or whatever like that. That's fine. The result at the end that the Meno brings the slave to, right, where he can double the square, is still some sort of scientific understanding. The contrast in this paper is to avoid understanding in the conventional sense, which he's taking to be, I don't know, scientific understanding, or understanding in the Kantian sense, which he seems to be using it as that which determines the world, and it's the scientific worldview for Kant that does that. And he's talking about how, in order to have the scientific worldview, we need this sort of psychological subject, and that's really what's at odds with it. And so we need to understand the scientific worldview, which I'm not really sure I think is appropriate. And I'm not, so I think the move that you're calling for is appropriate. We come to a point of better understanding by opening ourselves up to the possibility of perplexity. But he just seems to open us up to the possibility of like endless perplexity, some unfathomable perplex point you can never sort of wrap our head around.
That's the upsetting part.
Yeah,
with what you're saying, I don't see emotion happen, and that's why I'm like, so how do we get anywhere with that if I'm just constantly perplexed?
Yeah, it seems like I'm
permanently.
No, that's the other one where you are. There's nothing there because if you read the Crying of Lot 49, there's a lot of it doesn't fit. There's a lot of perplexity, and it never leads anywhere. Throwing up with that.
Yeah.
That's the other one. Saying somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
I don't know what that looks like, given what have you.
I don't know what we're supposed to be like, what the object of perplexity is, and like what we're supposed to be perplexed about. Like, what are we supposed to be chasing? What is the subject, or what is the object of psychology? Is it the brain? Is it the, I don't know, the mind? Is it, what is it? And if I try to say it, will it run away from me?
Say again?
And if I try to say it, will it run away from me?
I don't know. It sounds like you're feeling that maybe he's you feel like it's too much on that post-structuralist, postmodern side. It just like leaves everything in this indeterminacy, or
Not really. I think maybe just being around other people makes me understand more and more why people don't like Hegel and Lacan and all of those sorts of guys. Like, it's a pretty not intelligent way to deal with this subject matter, but it just seems needlessly difficult. as if though we are running away from the intelligible towards something less unintelligible and like hoping that we can get better, or like hoping that we can become clearer about something by becoming more obscure.
Okay. Let me so one place where this has been really unfolding for me has been thinking about the um yeah, I mean the broadest thing would be like the scientific project, but then it would also be in terms of relating to others and the way that they're grappling with life and making sense of things. And so like the like shorthanded way that I express it, like I encounter a lot this, and also in myself, this kind of this disposition or this desire to and I think it's very it's maybe I see it more in men also, like this desire to systematize, like to get a sense of like to get a sense of what the whole is, to get a sense of like all the parts, how it works, like the unified accounts of how all of this is fitting together as something that is then possessed by the subject who hasn't reflected on themselves as being within that frame. So it's like this distanced possession of a system of understanding or knowing. And then that might even maybe like the subject gets included, but then it's the problem that Hadley was pointing at. Like the subject gets included as this biomechanical mechanism that can be understood as like a fluctuation of chemicals and inputs and wada, and then you get this, but you've just like systematized the thing, and there's something that continually evades that systematizing, and that's the subject. And then thinking, or like even just like including that frees something up. So then like the the project for science is to how does it include that subject? How does it include the thing that can't be included? Like, so like how does it become dialectical or but there might be like a few places to jump off there, at least in terms of how I'm thinking the relevance or the stakes of this, like why labor through Lacan, or like why labor through Hegel, or
I'm wondering about what the scientific truth he has in mind is, right? Like he gives the example, I think it's on page 2 by Teresa Geron, and he says Newton's law, the best corroborated law in history, rises to the level of scientific truth, not because it suggests a certainty that is not that of knowledge, but because the law becomes the very site of coagulation of knowledge as evidence or corroborated proof. Scientific notion of truth, then, is linear, progressive, and cumulative, equivalent to the accumulation of knowledge to the point of certainty. I'm just wondering, like, is this accumulation the empirical accumulation of scientific truths? Is it a sort of sticking point of a priori certainties to the subject? What is the scientific stuff that we're doing when we do science, right? Like, what is the object of science? And is
in
it
this.
like, is it inductive knowledge? Like Newton's law certainly doesn't seem to be like, I mean, we could corroborate it if I drop my pen, but like that's not why I believe Newton's law, right? Like
That's
Effie,
not, I missed that last bit. That's not.
that's not why I believe Newton's law, right? I don't believe like F is an A over R squared because I dropped my pen. Surely I believe it because I understand the mathematical formulation of the formula for gravity, right?
Do you believe his
Why?
law?
I mean, I saw the proof of it this year in a math class, and it was pretty convincing.
Okay.
It's basic. It seemed like it was basic geometry. Just had to do a lot with circles and radiuses and mass at the center of a circle.
Yeah.
Didn't
I
seem
mean,
that. It didn't seem like I needed to drop my pen to see it, right? Like I don't need to corroborate it.
okay, okay.
The
Uh,
joy of corroborating it is like an added it's like an added extra, like something that I get for free after I figure out how to do the proof.
It
yeah, I
confirms.
guess, yeah, I guess the way I read that, or like, yeah, it's like this: the truth is further corroborated via like an accumulation. Like the more functional it is, the more like,
I wonder about
uh,
that though, because like the paradigm. So the reason why I bring up Newton's law is because the paradigm is something like a mathematical proof, and it seems like a mathematical proof is a pedagogical tool, right? I show you the formula and I draw the proof on the board and I do the deductive demonstration or something like that. And that's what gets me to see the truth, not leaving behind Newton's law and getting to some weird subject behind it. It seems to be the process of proof, right? That's what I
okay,
believe
yes,
today. That's the pedagogical process, right? If I want to know that the angle inscribed at the center circle of the triangle is 90 degrees, I go to Euclid and I look at the first set of propositions. I don't, I don't need to get further away from Euclid.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I have comments, but Sipo looks like he wants to say.
No, I'm only saying that Headley's has got a massive point. He's got a massive point here. Like, seems to be completely counterintuitive.
Look,
Okay,
I'm sorry to just continue on the train of thought. And I understand that Euclid is a subject, and so that he's determining this like proof process in some way, and that so there's like this ineffable subjectivity behind this proof process that's determining it. But I don't need to understand Euclid to understand the proof. That's the beauty of mathematical proof, right? I'm
okay,
making
yeah, yeah,
exaggerating. Like I don't need to know the psychology. I don't need to know this like the wonderful thing
yes,
about proof is that it's intersubjective.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. Like it's yeah, highly functional, and I get like we've been exploring that. But do you think so? Then my question would be like, where do you think the limit is, or where do you think it becomes unfunctional? And that question now like expands the context of it, because it's like in the context of pedagogy and maths, then yes, like we accept the hypotheses that get us going, and then we play from there, and we don't. It doesn't really matter the subject that the hypothesis came from in order to get the knowledge of the math. But then we're refining understanding to that process. And then but then like what are the how would we even gesture to oh well even in maths, in maths it's like uh the thing that's often repeated is like Gödel's incompleteness thing. Like there isn't a complete set of there isn't a category of categories. It's like
Yeah,
a
that's a problem with the formalist conception of like mathematical knowledge, right? That's a problem with like Russell um, and his system. Um, I'm not sure it's a problem with all systems. Like
I
incompleteness
guess
doesn't.
Same more. Yeah, you're
Uh,
coming fresh out of math, so let's.
yeah, fresh out of the good old philosophy of mathematics. Yeah, Gödel is proving incompleteness in the formalistic system, which is the system from Principia Mathematica, where Russell tries to reduce maths to logic, right? But in order to do so, he has to have some pretty like dodgy axioms and stuff like that. And then Gödel proves that there's something incomplete about the system. I can't remember how the proof works. But to generalize out from there's something wrong with Principia Mathematica to there's something wrong with systematic knowledge seems to presuppose quite a lot. It takes for granted, for example, that Russell is a good paradigm for knowledge, which I don't know. He doesn't really seem to be the best. His system leads to paradox. It's a one of the like Russell's paradox is a result of trying to accept this sort of set theoretic reduction of like everything to logic. I'm not sure we want to reduce everything to logic. I'm just saying that we've got these pedagogical tools in mathematical proof that might prove to be useful. And I think that the question that you asked is an important one. Like, what is the subject matter of pedagogy? But I think maybe that might be too broad a question, and maybe we should narrow it down to like, what is the subject matter of philosophical pedagogy or something like that, given that we're all philosophers, right? Like what are we trying to teach? And is it teachable? Is it the sort of thing that I can draw up the theorem for on the board and get you guys to see it?
Yeah.
I see you saying, I see you saying we're reducing it when we're moving from pedagogy to philosophical pedagogy. But being honest, it sounds like the same question to me. If I'm being completely honest with you, it sounds like you just asked me the same question with one more word. At the end of the day.
Yeah, maybe I was trying to be nice to anybody that's watching so that, they don't reducing pedagogy to philosophical pedagogy. But you can use them interchangeably. I don't mind. I'm happy to admit that the sort of pursuit of wisdom is something to do with pedagogy in general.
So I think where we can see the stakes is in the idea of teaching truth. Like, because you lose that in the postmodern sense, like that's even a silly thing to say. Or because it's like the science, like no, we have the way to get the truth done, but then there's limits in each. So then there was this stuff about like the aim as being the truth of the project toward truth. So then it's the activity that aims itself towards truth.
I'm
That
wondering,
Yeah. No. Go on.
like, what is it? Like sometimes I don't know. Like in science, it's spoken about as like correspondence, or in philosophy, it's spoken about as correspondence. Like if it's raining,
truth.
yeah, if it's raining outside and I say it's raining, then it's true because it corresponds to whatever the case may be. And that's pretty much the basic model of truth that we use for most things. But I'm wondering about like education seems to be problematic for like a model like that because it presupposes that like you're coming from it presupposes like a state of passage from like a state of not knowing to a state of knowing. So like you have to like not know to be educated. Like it doesn't if I know that it's raining outside, then I don't need to learn that it's raining outside. I just know it. Right. So I don't need a teacher or I don't need anything else. It seems like the only place where I need knowledge is where it's lacking.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Also seems to suggest, to add to what you're saying, it also seems to suggest that the only place where you can get knowledge is from a person who's not lacking. And yet we've seen countless examples of where people start off all not knowing and they get to something that they all seem convinced of. So, and ironically, if you look at correspondence, it seems to contradict the very claim that you need a person who knows to tell a person who doesn't know in order to get there. It seems you can also start off with people who don't know and somehow they all end up knowing. But then how do they know that they know if somebody isn't there to confirm a knowledge? Yeah, this happens once you start going into this route. This happens. Once you start going down this route. Where you're like, there has to be something. And I think this is where we fall back to truth. I don't see how we can ever get rid of it in any way. I think it's hard to describe it. Yes, it's hard to describe it because it might not be. Well, traditionally, people have tried to describe it as either it's this thing, or it's that thing, or it's this thing, or it's that thing, but it might be something that can be viewed in these multiple ways. You know what I mean? It can present itself in these multiple ways, and that could be the whole argument in the field of epistemology, where other people are saying, no, this is what it is, and then someone finds something wrong with it. Maybe it just doesn't present itself in the same way all the time. Maybe truth isn't always about correspondence or coherence or verification. Like sometimes,
You sound like you're getting back to this Lacanian guy, right? Like truth is that which makes, like big T truth is that which makes small t truth possible. Like all these iterations of truth are made possible by whatever the
by
truth.
that, if we're being honest, it sounds really Platonic. It sounds like
That's
this
what
big T
science
truth.
is. Isn't that what that's what science is doing? It posits the big T that makes the other truths possible, but it can't get the big truth.
Science
Yeah,
comes off as a small T as well.
at least in
Yeah.
the yeah. So science is like the product of science is a small t truth. But the big T truth that it presupposes and depends on, at least in Kant, is something like the transcendental subject or something like that, which is again the sort of psychological subject that I think he wants to talk about. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we can talk about the truth. Maybe I've been reading too much Wittgenstein. I'm not sure that we can talk about the truth. Maybe we can talk about like the stuff that is true, the scientific truth, the small T truths, and just like notice that there's something lacking. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure that
Yeah.
Sounds like we're back to
somebody correct me. I'm not sure that we can talk about the big T truth.
it sounds like we're back to forms. Sounds like we're looking for the form of truth.
I'm really enjoying this way, this like we can talk about it as the thing that refuses to be spoken, to be formalized, it's there, but like it
Slippers.
presence is something that is that escapes a bit.
So-
Then I have the leaning towards the sense of like that came up in that appropriate opposition stuff, that like there's a certain directionality, a potential for sharedness, a like a sharedness that exceeds individual direction, and that earlier this year I was relying on this a lot as being this like a a guide almost in thinking and speaking between. It's like this, if we can be tracking the same thing, there's something about that um is worthwhile. And then now it seems to be like tracking the thing that like almost conceals itself, or and how are we communed by that, or how do we can't we because we like it's it can't be transmitted if we're speaking about something. It can't be given in that sense. It can't be given and understood, but it's also it can be aimed at, orientated towards.
So this is
But
like
it seems
this is the issue that I was trying to raise before, kind of like we have this thing that we're pointing to, and it's escaping our grasp. What what's the appropriate response, right? Do we contemplate this thing that is presencing itself, or like do we use it, or do we, like in the case of the subject, do we be the subject? Like what's the function of truth?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
What do we do with it? Um. Uh. I don't know. The only thing that I can think is like uh we can well, the one thing I can think is we can begin to make space for it, and that's even that's even something. And then that would rely on a critique of a way that a system can totalize, and then the way that the totalizing system excludes the subject. So that would be one direction, I think, but I think they're probably more interesting.
It's sorry, thinking and trying to talk at the same time. Its value, its function, rather. I don't know. Can we separate function from utility? So I can't answer its function because its function sounds like it's something that is intended within its nature, like it's something, it's the thing it's supposed to do. But in terms of utility, as in what can we do with it, it seems more appropriate way of thinking about it. Because at least that we can answer. If we can't say anything about it, then we can't really come to a conclusion about its function in itself. But when we relate it to us, its utility, it seems to inform everything we do. That's why I think it's of value, because without it, then what are we doing? Like, we do things, and we want to do things because we believe what we're doing has an end, and we want the particular end that we do these things for. And if that's not true, then why the hell would we do things at all?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about in the pedagogical function, right? Like I understand what you're saying, and I know that like we can all agree on this because we're all people that have been taught by the same person and that can come, truth in this way. But what does it like really? What does it add up to at the end of the day? Like what's the teaching that we're doing, right? Like in the context of like what's the teaching of the truth, and how does it like benefit? Like
I don't know what it was about what Sipo said now, but it made me think about the in the context of appropriate opposition. It's almost like we're stumbling now onto the reason why virtue would be like appropriate opposition is like downstream from it. Because if you are I don't know, it's going to be the wrong expression whichever way I say it, but like if you allow the subject to be, then there's an inevitability of opposing the systems that want to totalize your understanding or your being. So then the position or the posture itself is radical. It's self-justifying. And then it's in keeping the position that one becomes opposed to, on the one hand, the systems that want to totalize, and so and then I think we might be getting into like arguments for freedom, or like freedom is its own good. So like keeping the orientation towards truth is itself like the radical act, or the benefits flow like downstream from it.
If we take a step back from what we've said, again, the more we talk about this, the more the things that were puzzling either become clearer or more puzzling. I don't know what's happening, but more things about them are revealing themselves to me. In terms of the small t and the big T, and our inability to speak about the big T, doesn't that work on the assumption that the revelation of the small t is not us interacting with the big T? In other words, us saying we can't say something about the big T, but the big T influences these things where we see the small t. Isn't that the way that we interact with the big T through the small t? Like, am I making sense here? Talking about big and small t's is a bit weird, but you get my point. Like, it's easier to talk about truth in itself when I'm talking about truth when it's constrained to an object. But really, what I'm talking about here is there's an example, there's a similar example of thing in the Phaedo, the example of equal sticks and the equal itself, right? Equal sticks and the equal itself, right? Where the people are talking about equal sticks, but there are no real equal sticks. And this talking about this equal sticks makes them realize that they're talking about something that isn't here, which is the equal in itself. It seems to be something removed from equal sticks. But looking at sticks that are here is what makes them see the equal stick. I mean, the equal in itself.
I've been thinking about that example a lot recently and wondering, because it seems like a terrible example.
It does.
Right? The equal sticks and stones that aren't equal to themselves, and we see them as equal through some form of equality. But the form of equality is alone by itself, and so not equal to any other. And it turns out the form of equality is neither equal to itself nor equal to the unequal sticks and stones. So the form of equality is unequal? What are we going to do with that? That's not helpful. It doesn't help me see the equal sticks and stones, and it doesn't help me see the form of equality. It seems like neither are really there, right? Seems easier to say I don't see equality. I just miss the things.
Fair enough, but it does direct your attention, and that's the thing. That's the thing that it seems to have in common with the big T and the small t, is that the small t's seem to direct our attention to the existence of some big T.
I wonder
you know what I'm saying?
Attention, right? Like as an imagined objection, like someone that isn't part of this group. What's to just say that it's not just sending us on a wild goose chase, right? Like we're just like chasing after nothing, like dogs after their own tails. Like there's no big T truth, there's no small T truth, there's no truth. That's the assumption that's sending us astray, right? Shouldn't we just be structuralists and postmodernists and just, leave it all behind? Sounds like it makes a lot more sense, right?
It's easy. It's easy. It's easy. I would say for that person, and I think you and I have had this conversation since the beginning. Since the beginning, I would say to that person, the problem with that position is that we have no reason to believe the claim that there are no truth. Then that position is as absurd as all the other positions. Which means I can't even take it seriously as a rejection to the other position.
Of course you can't. No reason for anything. Why take it?
So why would I even listen? Why would I even listen to that to get to the point where I remove everything else if it itself is its own opposition? Am I making sense?
I don't know. You don't have to listen to it. It's as much its own opposition as every other position seems to be.
Now that's the civil way. There's always the not so civil way to get a person to realize there's truth. I'm pretty sure if you kick them in the shin and ask them, you feel like you were kicked in the shin, something will click in their head. That there is a difference. There's a difference between truth and not truth. But according to our teacher, I can't take that there. Our teacher can't. Yeah.
You do the two things that I really appreciate in when we start doing philosophy. The one is like the peculiar way that you present a kind of perplexity, and then the other is your introduction of like the possibility of violence.
because there's no doubt in violence. When you see it, you know what's happening. A child knows violence when they see violence. So it's the best example for something you can't doubt. And when you're experiencing violence, you know.
I want to react to that train, but like this the I guess like just anecdote like that equal sticks thing was I think like one of my really memorable turning moments. Like Larry gave it to us in some writing exercise, and I was like writing about it and getting all frustrated about what this is like a stupid like and arguing something, and then I'm like even forgetting the content, but the response was like, oh, it's it was like a pausing, it was like, oh, like the like keep it was like keep looking at that thing. And I was frustrated. I was like, no, like I said what I said about the equal sticks, but it was like keep looking, and it just that moment like stuck and then resonated. I keep looking at the equal sticks and this like equality, but that's where I want to push back. It's the way that you first started talking to people was like this sense of you were saying the big T, the small T, and when you were saying the big T, you were saying like about to be about the. Whereas I think, and it might also be the case with this equality that is itself unequal or like asymmetric. It's like the that T is something that insists in you, or is your own insistence. It's like, or is you, or is your subjectivity. So it's like that the continual move is to try and formalize and to place it so that you can be about it, but it insists as the thing that you are, and then that like, and it keeps insisting. And for me, that's like the uh I think the it's not even an argument. It just has to insist. Like that's a
Yeah,
and then
that's what, right? What if it doesn't? Right? What about those people that it just doesn't exist for? There's many of them, right?
yeah,
We wanna push this like
that
as the
We
pedagogical
might be
tool.
brainwashed.
Huh?
We might be
that
brainwashed.
yeah.
But
It's
some people
possible.
manage to get along very well without doing this sort of a activity, right? They just are, right? And even worse, many people in the academy seem to be getting along very fine without
Yeah,
it.
okay. So the on the if I were to have to try and make a case to someone in the academy, I would say something to the effect of like this tyrannical totalizing way of knowledge and need to break that or something. But that's maybe I think it's something to our appropriate opposition. Like
You want to say that
if
it's you want to say that the complacency is not natural. Like the complacency is something like inbuilt from like the way that we systematize knowledge or have systematized knowledge, and what's actually natural is this like insisting subjectivity, whatever you want to call it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the I think that's where the anecdote is nice because it was like Larry going like, no, like look at the equal sticks again. Like, no, look at the equal sticks again. And I was irritated enough to look at the equal sticks again, and then something started to turn. So it's like it's the that subjectivity that we are insisting is that kind of presence within relationship with and this is really lovely how it's tying in with the appropriate opposition because it gives a like a um I don't know if it's an argument but or at least like a functional account or it's like the opposition is innate to the subject.
Yeah, he seems to talk about that
Subject.
actually at some point in the paper. I think it's on page 6 or something. He talks about learning requiring an other. Learning the truth is not a matter of being open, nor is it something you can do by yourself. You need an other. It's quite mysterious the way you need an other. We take an example of Freud himself, it looks like he did it alone, learned the truth of psychoanalysis. but in fact he did it in reference to another, his friend Willem Fliess. And I mean, that sounds like a weird empirical generalization, like Freud read this book, and so there was like an other to his research or something like that. But I'm wondering if like the otherness is like a necessity in a more fundamental way, like as like a you need this opposition, or you need like someone to be against, and then I guess the question is like how how to be against them, like what's the
Mm.
appropriate opposition.
Like
Mm.
like how would you
Like, so the teaching example that you gave sounds pertinent, right? Because like it seems like it really moved you, and the example that you gave of someone forcing you to look at sticks is an example of a teacher. Like Larry was your teacher, and he's taught you this insistence by like opposing you, right? You want to turn your gaze away from these equal sticks and stones, but he's just there going, no, concentrate, like focus, sharpen up, right? So like it seems like there's like this process of like I don't know. I'm wondering what we oppose when we're teaching, and then like how we oppose it. Like what are we supposed to be like
yes
opposing? How
yes
do
that yeah that question fantastic because like that's very much what we're in that can virtue be taught like that's the a lot of our questions orientated around. And that's why when Sipo was saying what he was saying, like it was a real coming together for me in the sense of like the we seem to be coming to an account of exactly that question. And it's the insistence of the subject themselves. Like it's that the subject insists. So it like it almost demystifies or uncomplicates that question. It's like uh it doesn't it almost it feels like it doesn't have to be given a content. It's the and that might be a cop out and the it's at least the sense from this conversation because the um like even looking at examples like what kind of is it what kind of cynical performance art in your face enactment are we talking about like yeah yeah but the my I got excited there because of the link that seemed to come out in this conversation. The the but I was before that I don't know how to form it, but like I'm wanting to hear you ponder on yeah, I guess how you think about the function of the other in that passage that you brought out, like the function of the other in the pedagogy and the
Yeah, it seems like it could play like a number of roles, right? Like various different roles. So the way that like I read the Freud's so Freud looks like he did it alone, like he's like doing this book thing by himself and coming up with these ideas by himself. But then there's Willem Fliess, whoever that is that he looks at, and it seems like this empirical finding, right? Like there's like an empirical other, like just like there's another book on the subject matter. You kind of need the other book to do the research, right? Like you need some starting point, and then like that like very mundane way, it seems kind of boring. Like yeah, of course, you know, can't do the research in a vacuum or something like that. But I think that that's like I think that that's powerful because it goes against a very specific framework for thinking, like a very modern framework for thinking. I'm thinking like Descartes and meditations, like one way we like the aim of our knowledge is to go into this private space. Like this, the space for certainty is just the subject, right? Like I go do my meditations, I go look at my hands in front of me and realize, oh, there could be like a dream state, and I could be dreaming all of this, and there might be like an evil demon deceiving me. And somehow through this process, I come to something indubitable. And that's what the ability to doubt or the ability to think, the thinker, the subject. But that subject doesn't seem like it needs another, right? There's no like friction like between like me coming to like have this illusion and coming to realize that like I am I can't doubt that doubting is possible. That seems like a completely private experience. And so I'm wondering whether like otherness is inbuilt into like education, and if it is, like how it gels with this sort of privative framework that we have.
What about time? What about the element of time? I mean, I would understand if
Kant puts time in the self. If you want a worse example, time is
no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. I mean, even Descartes going to meditate or reflect, he is still reflecting on things he came to realize through the interaction with other people before the moment of reflection. So it seems like if we just isolate him to the time of meditation, then it seems like it's an activity you can do all on your own. But he doesn't exist in just the times of his meditation. He's also got times before, which are the things that influence the things he meditates about before he gets to the conclusion. So it seems to be a prerequisite. Come again?
Isn't that the whole point of the turning? Sure, you need previous experience to meditate, but the conclusion of the meditation is that your previous experience could be as much a dream as, you know, any other previous, like it's an alleged previous experience, right? Before the meditations, you think that the senses and the external world exists. And after that, you come to realize it could all be a terrible simulation type thing. And so in that sense, to do the activity of meditating, it doesn't really seem like you need any external content to your thinking. You don't need another. In fact,
I'm not.
You don't have is any other, right?
I'm
still
not
like the childhood stuff that you learned and all of that good stuff, but like in the process, you like come to eliminate these presuppositions of like otherness in your thinking, and that's when
but that activity of elimination includes the things you have collected through social interaction. Whether the social interactions are illusionary or not is another matter. But
well, if
what leads to
social interactions, are they?
If they illusionary, they not. If they illusionary, they're not social interaction.
Yeah, right.
But if they're not illusionary, you have nothing to meditate about if you had no interactions before.
I don't know if that, I'm not sure if that's right, C4. That sounds like the type of thing that people that just like unjustifiably like appeal to like other subjects existing would appeal to, right? Like I don't know.
I'm not.
Your line on you.
Yeah. I get exactly what you're saying. I get exactly what you're saying. But now I'm not making an argument about the existence or not existence of other people.
Okay.
I'm talking about in a world where people do exist, whether they exist or not something I can tell you for sure. In a world where they do exist, you don't get to that meditation without interacting with people first. So in time, if we're isolating our question about education to just the time where you're meditating alone, then you can't do education without an other. But if we take it throughout the span of someone's life, right? If we talk about education as something that's continual and we look at it throughout someone's entire time, then it can never be done without another, because even the thing is reflecting about our interactions with other people. There have to be interactions to reflect about. Unless none of it is real.
Isn't that I think so. I think what you're trying to say is correct. I just don't know whether you're saying it correctly. Like there needs to be some external content to meditate about, or like something that's like not the meditator, that the meditator has to meditate about, and that is itself another. But I think if you say that like the process of meditation presupposes and depends on this like interaction this like previous lifetime and it's like a continuous process. I think
No, no.
I'm not sure
no.
that that's the point of the meditations, right? And
Oh, this
also,
is not talking about avatar. I just mean like if I gotta think about some shit, like I have to have interacted with people to think about some shit.
well, what I'm trying to say is that firstly, I'm not arguing for the position in the meditations. Like, don't get it twisted, right? I'm trying to bring out the otherness in the the element of otherness at play here. I'm just trying to defend this position to see like what we do with it because it seems like it prompts a different response from like what you just said right now, right? Like when you go to think about something that you should go and meditate about it. Whereas if thinking necessarily includes another within itself, then what you should be doing when you want to think is not going into your room by yourself. You should be coming out with your friends and talking about it, right? Like that's
Nice.
what it seems to
You
be.
see,
That was some.
the
That was just
reason
some mood.
the reason I'm making the reason I
That
was
was a
trying
dance
to make
for
the
the heart.
point.
And the
The reason I
highlights,
was
the
trying
highlights. You sound like one of those people who just unjustifiably speak about others existing.
Hmm. The reason I was trying to make the point is to show that it seems that you can do it with an other, and you can also do it without an other, depending depending on whether we are viewing it as depending on how we are applying time to it. In other words, like are we looking at just the time you are alone and you reflecting at that time? Then at that time, yes, you can do it on your own. But if we don't add the element of time to it, then it becomes a confusing conversation because it becomes a yes, you can and a no, you can't at the same time. So that was the point I was making, that in an isolated time where you're reflecting about your things like the meditation, and yes, you can do it. You can do it on your own. But if we're looking at it in terms of like throughout the time of your existence, not just an isolated time as in the time when you're meditating, then no, you can't do it on your own because the things you end up meditating about in the spectrum of times are things you've interacted with before the meditation, before the time you took to meditate. So the only point I was making is without that distinction, it becomes more of a problem than it actually has to.
Yeah, I was just saying that it could be even more of a problem because of someone, I don't know, say Kant, who internalizes time because we can't have the experience of a simultaneity or a succession without having the concept of simultaneity or succession. And so, like, we can't experience things as before, after, or at the same time without being able to use these concepts. And so, when I conceptualize time, the totality of my experience, my whole life, is
Yeah.
my determination of time. It's not, it's
Mhm.
not, I locate like the past and the future in reference to myself. So for someone like him, time is a construct. And so if we were to push this sort of privative um, like standpoint to its extreme, a la Kant,
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like we would have your problem. It seems like your problem would go away. The Kantian standpoint, of course, doesn't need to be taken. I'm just saying that like that time thing, that before or after thing is probably
Yeah.
presupposes that time is a thing in itself outside us or something like that. He might put it.
I'm
Those men
experiencing a.
nice time. Sorry, I'm no, never mind, never mind. I'm falling into a hole here. I'm falling into a hole here with Kant's conception of time. We'll talk about it some other time, Edley,
It's not important.
where you can clarify it better for me. Because right now I'm like, what? I'm like I get what you're saying, but I'm also like, what? How is time not outside of us? But we'll talk about that some other time. Let's stay on board. Stay on board.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, like I think the interesting point for pedagogical reasons is that otherness and that like the question of like, do you go to your room to meditate alone? Like is thinking something done in the presence of oneself, or is thinking something that like or like is education something that comes to be in the presence of another? And like, what does that mean for the educational space? And I guess like the pedagogical tasks that we set, right? Like what sort of tools do we have for education?
This
Like for essays, right? Like essays are weird. Maybe it's just because I'm writing one at the moment and I really don't want to write this paper, so I'm here with you guys instead. But it's
Yeah.
just like it's like this very privative experience, right? I open up my laptop and I sit at the desk with like copies of books next to me, and like I type the words on the page, and then I look at them and I see them and I go, I don't know. Does this sound any good?
Yeah.
Probably not, right? And it's I don't know. I think I learned something from them. Like that seems to be one of the times that I learned quite a lot, like in this privative experience. But like it, even that seems to require that like there's like some sort of teacher that's just like make sure that like I'm not like stupid, right? Like I hand the paper in, and the marker goes, yeah, okay, like B, clarify, uh, structure this better. Like it's like you need
It
that.
also
Yeah, it's
seems like the books are in other as well. The
Yeah.
ones you're reading while doing the essay.
So it seems like there's like always this presencing of like another. But like I'm just wondering about like, so the reason that I'm wondering about this so intently is that like um I'm scared we're skipping the whole point of tension, right? Like the whole knot. The whole knot seems to be like the academic space is not this, right? Like,
ah,
but now we're coming to say, no, it's always been this all along, and you guys just haven't noticed it, right? Like the essays that you're writing have these others next to them, like the books that you're reading are sort of othering, you're always in discussion with another. But like that makes it even worse, right? It's always been this way, and yet nobody still notices it. Like, how do we like I don't know, I'm thinking about like the perspectival shift. Like um how do you initiate that like gestalt shift? Like how do you initiate that shift in perception from like
yeah,
I'm privative scientific thinker, um, and the work that I do is my own, to learning always involves another, and education thinking always involves another.
yeah. They're two people. I'm going to remember the cunt and time thing, and maybe we can convene around something there. Hadley can lead us. The the so this I've been on a philosophy portal, and this guy's experimenting in the post uh institutional space, and a difference that he has seen after going through PhD, um, and also this tendency towards like an interdisciplinary thing, is that the kinds of online spaces that are opening, like for Zoom afforded, there's this real cultivation of what we're doing now, like a dialogical um, thing, where we're faced with the other subject like quite immediately and in the space of speech. But then what is being underdeveloped in that space is the output of something like papers. So longer research projects that are slower work, more deliberate, that tends to not be as represented in that networked dialogical space. It's still kind of the purview of an institution. So the institution kind of like slows down, and we almost get like a lost sense of that way in which you have to transfer the sense of authority onto the other, your lecturer or the person who's reading your paper is going to mark it in order to even get that going, so that you like addressing your writing to someone who's going to check it, and then it's just like an expanded dialogical thing, and then a context of like a living speech where we're speaking and being responded to as we're doing it. that's just Hadley whole the I wanted to rope Avuyile in by saying I want to transfer an otherness onto you of being able to tell us what's happening. would you because I'm trying to squeeze like a particular mode of otherness like this, that the word is used like transference, like that you, in order to even get the process going, like the learning process, there has to be this sense that you believe that the other in some way can tell you something about yourself or about experience or about knowledge. It's a very clumsy way to try and rope you in or get what you're thinking.
What keeps coming up for me is The Teacher by Augustine. I know we didn't finish that. I think I liked the idea of the teacher in our common understanding as signposting, right? So the best I can do as an authority figure is sort of steer what's happening here, right? Signpost to where I think it should go, but give enough space to follow up every other thing. So I can present myself as an other, possessed of some knowledge, right? Not rigidly hold to the knowledge, because I understand that I myself am pointing to something I might not even see. Right? So there's a growth and expansion of my knowledge, of my ways of explaining. There's a fluid movement happening between me and whoever. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that sounds very cool, right? Like you present yourself as an other in the situation where you're presenting as a teacher, but you still like recognize that you're like presenting them. So like you have this pedagogical function where whoever you're teaching, the learner, comes to recognize something in you acting as an opposition to them, in you, I don't know, showing them that their arguments lead to this place or that they like something insists. But at the same time, you're also in acting as an opposition and being aware of that, you're also open enough to yourself be a learner. You've got like this like dual function as like the opposing and the opposed, because by opposing the thoughts of another, you come to see like different inroads into this like otherness, like this different inroads into like this whatever you're pointing at that you may not even know, but like that you can like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
The
what I found, if I can remember, very interesting about the discussion so far. Wait, I'm trying to find it. It's gone. It's gone. While Hadley was speaking, I remembered something that I was thinking of while the conversation was happening. I can't surface.
it might come back. I mean, in what Hadley said now, that I think it said in this paper, you know, like it's bringing truth more to the aim, so that it's in the orientation or in the aim, so in the signposting, like the pointing, more than the goal, because the goal is going to come back into the aim, because we're not going to get that thing to understand. It's going to.
I might be pulling us off in a tangent, but it seems that part of the educative enterprise, right, is to, parroting what's already been said, put the other in the student. So what I want you to learn to do is to grow in the ways that I grow as your teacher, and to self. And this is what essays do, but we've lost knowledge of, okay, maybe when I do this thing, I'm supposed to do it more than once, and I'm supposed to see different things. So I should have different sort of central focus. The more I move my work along, we're doing this and we're trying to be good enough to get the approval of that person who's trying to grow themselves. So ideally what I should be doing is presenting something which might or might not be in your line of understanding, but if it's not, it pulls you in another direction. If it is, I've shown you something else. I'm not saying it. Yes,
Abu
we
Iles,
should view
Abu Iles.
it as a back and forth.
I was wondering about what you were saying, and it's like this. It's like a different mode of being. Like being an educator is like it's different because you have to be both for self and for other. Like you have to be aware of yourself and that you're an individual subject that doesn't really know what you're doing, and at the same time you have to be able to confront another subject and somehow get them to like recognize this like unknowing state within themselves or like show them something. And I was wondering like what you are when you're an educator. Like what is it to be an educator, and like what is the like it seems like it's a different mode of being, and that like you have a different relationship to like I'm wondering about like big B being itself. Like the seems like being itself is like the ultimate other. It's like
Yeah,
the world is always like confronting us. It's like always standing against. Um,
yeah.
seems like
That
seems like when you're being like a teacher or an educator, you're like standing in that role. You're like
yeah.
you're world practicing, so to speak. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's what I was going to say. That element in what you're in your positioning of the educator, it's also that role of taking the transference of being an authority, of like of the one who's knowing, of the one who has the and I mean like we see people getting caught up in that, like you believe that, and then you're like now you're too much in that position, and you're not doing the kind of education that we're speaking about. But I also want to, Avile, I'm going to put words in your mouth. Well, I'm not actually. This is the slogan for Avile's pedagogy. Alienate your students. That's what you said.
Train students and then maybe. So I think there's something about friendship and discipleship that makes it easier to shift. So I can go, oh, I don't know. Let's actually, but I can't do that if I encounter you as something to do. So if I have an understanding of what it is I'm supposed to, it's like being a parent. When you are a parent, you know so much about children, but you don't know the particular person in front of you. And you're trying your best to, but you've got to learn this person in order to do this job, right? And you're not quite sure what the ultimate end of all this parenting should look like, but you are moving and you're shaping this claim, right? That's easier if you drop yourself, drop your ego, kind of befriend the person. Go learn me, I will learn you. Let's kind of move around this thing, avoiding the shock.
How much do you think? How much do you think we need that mediating being that Hadley was being in, and how do you think we should conceive of that between us? Like, should we be conceiving it in like a particular way between the educator and the student, or should it be? I mean, how do we place that thing?
I'm Christian.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm glad that Avila is like like I'm glad this whole conversation, like the past like 2 sentences, has been great because like you put the words alienation into Avila's mouth, and then she turned the words alienation into friendship, and you the sort of third term, like the in betwixt, that comes into being, and I wonder about like this. That's also why I guess I was suspicious about this paper, because when I read the word other, I want to think friend, but the other is so distanced. It's like the other sounds unfriendly. Like it doesn't sound like the type of person that I want to. It doesn't sound like the type of thing I want to be around. Like I don't want to be around another. I certainly don't want to be around myself. That's just a self-deprecating remark. But like the third thing that I want to be around is like someone else, like
Ah,
a friend.
I'm jumping there. I'm jumping there because it's like this, that self-deprecation
Yeah.
is for, like, I think there's something really alien about subjectivity, and we feel that in ourselves. So that even our relation to ourselves, like we fail to be ourselves because of how alien we are to ourselves. So then, the like that yeah, but yeah,
think
yeah.
there's other way as well.
Mhm.
I'm
I think
wondering
there's
about like
other way.
is like this
Yeah.
like I'm wondering about like this like very modern phraseology, right? Like this like very like it's it's like very subjectivity forward. Whereas like the language of like friendship, the language of like the ancients, I guess, is much more like in the world. It seems to like admit of like an otherness. Like it's not that we have to say that there's another. It's just like there is, right? It's there, and it's this, and like what we're cultivating is not otherness. We're cultivating friendship, right? Like that's the sort of thing.
I see. Yeah.
And like that reframes the educational pursuit completely. It's neither like this like a scientific endeavor where like you're endeavoring to like find this objective truth in the world or something like that. And it's also not this like psychological endeavor to like figure out this like subjectivity that is the self that like comes up, I think, in this like the Can paper. But it's like it's a together endeavor for people. Like it's something that
Yeah.
we do as friends, right?
Mm.
Why do you think? Why do you think we seem to need to recover friendship through alienation, or like through this?
I'm
Like,
not
why
sure
do?
that we have a friendship through alienation. It just seems like there's like a presencing of alienation, at least within like academic philosophy or something like that, or like subjectivity. It seems like I've been having this like crisis, like at the beginning of the year, about like we we can't go back to the agora and we can't take a step forward. Like there's no direction to philosophy. Like it's like can't go back to the ancients. We've already like gone past them and we've already like lost too much. So like a return would be like inauthentic. Like it would be like we're gonna drop all this languaging and all this like interesting stuff that comes up in the periods after them. But it's like we can't go forward because there's like no like what are we aiming toward when we like try to aim towards like the future of philosophy or the future of education, and like how do we get there? Like it doesn't seem to be like either this route of like alienation or like just dropping it. It seems like we have to like transform like to put it in stupid mystical words, to like be alchemical, to like transform this like dirt into gold, right? To like
Mm.
bring it back to its former state of like shininess. And like I think
Yeah, but like
friendship
what?
is much more shiny than alienation. Like or like
Yes.
friend.
Okay. Okay. So so what you said was that like a um you put, like, you were saying, like, maybe the ancients, when they were speaking about friendship, they were speaking about exactly this thing that we just kind of got to, with like this almost alienating the other. But there's some function that that language is doing then for us, that seems to be like, so something's happened to our idea of friendship, or our conception of friendship, that means that, like, this language is in some way resuscitating something lost in it. So then I think, like, the question was like, why, or like, how do we think about that? um like, what was lost, or like, what was degraded, so that in order to revive the spirit between us, it's like this, there's this needing to gather around, like othering the other, or becoming alien to each other, or
Yeah, because like there's like so like in like the ancient period at least, what's like really humbling and wonderful is like that like we don't have strength over nature, right? Like nature is there and like we confront it and we don't really know what we're doing with it all the time, but we have like some general idea. But with the moderns, like subjectivity comes to the fore, right? Like the private individual becomes this like powerful entity. With Kant, at least, we get like this like determiner of nature. Like man becomes the determiner of nature. I think that's very empowering in and of itself, right? Like we somehow get above, we hover above experience as if for a moment, and like we now learn that we like can determine the world rather than be determined by it. But in so doing, we come to this like loss, right? Like we hover above the world and forget as if though we belong inside it all along. And like it's
yeah,
like this weird return that we have to do to like come to see that we're both not completely nature bound and not like as powerful as like that like moment of like subjectivity once showed. It's like this it's like being like a fighter, I guess, like knowing your strength, like punching at blows and like going like landing a good hit here and there, and then sometimes you get decked, and then like sometimes it's like you can get like a strength check, like, and then you need to know like how to reorient yourself to get around that like issue.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Avila's got the eyes.
lay in Avila.
No, I think the art of friendship is mastering the art of becoming
Becoming?
the other. So a
Yeah,
good friend is where I know that I do not know you as much as I know you.
yeah,
Something about you will always elude me, so I continually learn, right? But there's something else that anchors our friendship. That if you go astray, I call you back to that one. Right? I remind you of that thing on which our friendship is built. That thing is alien to both of us, but we are both traversing into it.
Yeah, I wonder if that's not the friendship, right? Like the friendship is not like the me or you, or like the it's like the betwixt that like I like pull you, I like revert your gaze to. Like
yeah.
the friendship is like an entity existing over and above the friends that like brings them into relation with one another.
Avila, how do you think how do you how do you uh how do you achieve that otherness? How do you like how do you I'm struggling for the like maintain it for the friend, like how do you
You continually inquire about it. You never take on face value that you understand fully what's going on. You adjust yourself as much as they've presented patterns or sort of ways of behaving around you. You never assume, not you, just like the teacher, drop your ego, you drop your position, right? And go, okay, I learn as much as I can, right? Let kind of steer things here, right? You know as little as I know about you, about me, and we know about just about sort of enough about each other. We're both in this weird position together, but this thing was built on something, and for the sake of the something else, sometimes the friendship survives, even though the understanding between the two persons is lost completely. For the sake of that something else, the friendship survives. At times where me and my sister have not seen eye, right? But instead of going, something called me back to the point of friendship, because there's something else that is directing both. So even when there were seasons where dark, I would hold out in virtue of that something. Right? So you can survive after a big spat with a sibling or a friend, not talking for months, because there's something pushes the two of you forward. And even if there's no catching up or apology, right, you can accept them back because of that. You don't know what the hell happened. So it spazzed.
Yeah. There's two things, like I think that was an answer to what we were an initial puzzle in the conversation, like why are we even why are we even starting this? And it's like so we can be a friend is the kind of answer. And then the way that you're using the word something there, I was thinking it's almost like a nothing, like a it's like a nothing something. It's like because you're distinctly avoiding giving it a content, and that's like and then that's also this thing of like just having this something that is nothing is it's a hard to relate to, but it's exactly the thing that pulls through a deadlock, or that introduces the possibility for like an otherness in relationship. It's like I mean I've been thinking about this in relation to I had the in relation to lamentation and uh, weeping or uh, and I kind of got a sense of like a blues motif, it's like the idea that like if 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 I'm lamenting something, but I'm lamenting it and I have a sense of what it's going to be resolved in, or like a future positive outcome, like I haven't really lamented the thing. So it's like the more that my outcome orientation is actually negative, the more I can be reconciled with what is going on. And then it's through that there's like potential for something. But there like it's this resisting somehow, like uh positivizing the what we'll get through, the something that we'll arrive at, the like because then you're losing the bluesy kind of
It's also like, I think like I don't know. I think it's like a stern-faced seriousness. I'm not sure that like we can like have the like happy-go-lucky like children like hopefulness to like wait for this like positivity to like presence itself. But like we can't like slip into like this attitude of like pure negation, like this like pure
yeah.
like instead of blues, just like drone and like disappointment and like slipping into nihilism. Like slipping into nihilism seems like the like once we let like being become nothing or something like that, it seems very easy to like be disappointed at that. Um, but it seems like there's like another way to like approach it with like a sort of like a this is what it
Yeah.
is, right?
This feels like a very productive area to go into and difficult. Um, uh, yeah, I
I've
mean,
been
like, oh, yeah,
I've been wondering about like the role of boredom, like in
boredom.
yeah, like being bored. Like there seems to be like this like moment of stasis that you like have to approach to like do it like properly, and like the boredom feels like a nothingness. Like the boredom is like the something confronts you, but it like no longer has like either the power to like sweep you away off your feet and for you to be like to like fall in love with it, and like or like it's also just like not like harsh and terrifying enough to like scare you anymore. You're just like confronted by
Yeah,
this thing, bored. But like the problem with boredom is like how to get that like stimulus to like what brings you to like react again. Like how do you like switch out of that like seeing everything in this like flattened way to like actually like coming to be productive again. Like it seems like you need the stimulus to be productive, but you also like have to like not let it like hit you too hard. Otherwise, like you do something wrong. Like it's like you go astray.
Yeah. Yo, the stakes are high in those differences. It's like there are many like I have in mind of like I some images, just like images kind of thinking, and then also just like anecdotal, like um uh feeling like a depressed experience recently, and then coming to like realizing I'm like I'm performing the depressed mode, like I'm doing the performances of a depressed person. And then like and then realizing that like, oh, I have to do stuff, and then doing the stuff, but the content, say, of of the depressed mode, nothing happened to it, like it remained, but then I was just doing stuff out of duty, out of the sense of like duty, and then somehow I understood a lot of the men in my life.
That's terrifying. That.
And then but so this came out in uh, a guy in church. He's into men's work, and we were thinking about like transitions in adulthood, and the sense that there's this there's something there's something that can't be trusted in the one who's performing as the adult, but you can detect that there's like a Maya underneath that hasn't been resolved. So then there's like this dutiful performance of a maturity, but there's like there's that same that's going to be reverted back to like that threatening there, that like that well Maya. I mean, and maybe the image that I had in mind is like it's like because that almost non-gesture of the acceptance of boredom or the acceptance of a negative is like often in dream kind of imagery, it's like a water level, and then the panic of being submerged and drowning, and then some kind of like breathing underwater, like you can't get up and out of the water, but then you somehow realize that you can like breathe underwater, and then you it's just like, and now it's like not an effort, you're not trying to keep your head above the thing all the time, you're just like oh. Yeah, I hope you don't have drowning dreams.
I'm just wondering about like this, like now we've gotten onto this like topic of like adulthood, I guess, like through your like thing, and like I'm just remembering like the paper is like a paper presented at a conference for like adult education um, in altered states.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about that like distinction, like adult education, like
Mm.
like I don't know, like childhood education, I guess.
Where would you how would you like what do you think it is like?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, part of me wants to like hold on to it and like be, you know, very much like this is an adult endeavor. Like, I don't know, the uni kid. I've been TAing for first year, so it's like the uni kids coming in and like they're like coming to be adults and like you know you can see like certain like people have like reached like the stage of maturity where there's like intellectual accomplishments like they can like focus on an argument or like stick to the topic and that stuff it's hard, it's like you take it for granted once you're there but it's difficult but there's also like a resistance like it seems like I'm not sure whether it's the kids that are like that are adults that have this like propensity, or whether it's just the children that were like well reared. Like, like does this intellectual achievement come to be present because of their transformation that they're going through, like some like age transformation, not like specifically like your 20s or something like that, or does it like, or does the potential have to be like there from like, I'm thinking of like the training in the Republic in like books 3 of like the ways in which they like do like gymnastics and musical education and all of that sort of stuff to like instill this like potentiality to like receive, to like to be disciplined, or like this potential for like harmony or something like that. So I'm wondering about like, do we draw the distinction, or do we just like say education? Like, is that is that a better way of thinking, or do we need like adult education as a qualifier?
I mean, like off the bat, I would have to think of like, because also from that Platonic frame, it's like the contradiction as a summoner. So then it's like in the like mode of truth that's being put forward, it's like there's a certain requirement for tolerance and then even interest in terms of uh, paradoxical or contradictory material, so that it's um, like on the peripheral, there's kind of like emotional things, and um, in terms of confronting or being with contradictory material, that that yeah, I think some settledness in terms of adult. I mean, I've tended to think along these lines a lot in terms of like a an embodied sense, like the physical sense of safety required in order to think some things, almost in order to like a if thinking the thought is really going to shift one's sense of oneself, one sense of reality, participation in, and you lose this like hope that you had in arriving at this certainty through this particular understanding. And I think there's, yeah, I mean, I think mostly, I mean, this whole subject has a gravity for all of us in our thinking, like the thinking, education, and there's that Platonic root for us, like the gymnastics and movement and or music, sorry, gymnastics and music. So I
One
mean,
thing to like derailing time. Was while you were talking about like Zoom versus like the academic space, and this just seems like the time to talk about that a little bit more. Like you talked about how there's now like a lot more opportunity for like these dialogical spaces, but there's not like this produced, refined like the papers, like journal articles or something like that. And I mean, I was wondering about like the Zoom space in general. Like, what's the space for the academy in general? That's the first question, I guess. And then like, what's the product, right? Like, what's the product of knowledge? Is the product of knowledge like the paper? And is that what we ought to work on? Because like here, just in an academic context again, the paper is good insofar as it gets me to do some sort of work and to figure out some ideas. Um, and then you have like the paper as product. You release the research paper, you get it published by a journal or something like that, and other people can like read the paper. But I'm wondering about like, I don't know, like the podcast as product, or like like the possibility for like an alternative form of production that one is perhaps less alienating, because there's a lot of talk about like fear of publication or something like that. Like you have to publish, and so you just write rubbish, and then like it's not anything worthwhile. And then like what the role of the product in like education is, what the product of education is, because it certainly doesn't seem to be like the paper. Like I'm almost never happy with anything I write, but like the stuff that I like come to learn through the writing process, like the sort of self productivity that I get from like this the product as self becoming a better person seems to be like much more what the academic pursuit is about. And I'm wondering like whether that's like translatable in these different mediums.
yeah, Yeah. I mean, I think that's like your understanding yourself as the product of your academic enterprise is potent and maybe not like a distributed understanding. So it's like it's an orientation that you're almost bringing to it that isn't necessitated by the context. I mean, yeah, it's a this I mean, just reflecting on the little bit I've engaged with the like podcast format, the audio. It's a it's a particular. This is a production. There's that lovely way in which like this living activity can then be recorded and but it's not as say concise or extractable or bullet pointed. And that's because it is pointing to this activity, and that activity implies the sense that like the ones involved in the activity are kind of the point of the activity. And then the like more distributed sense making project kind of happens as like as a consequence, or it's a little bit different from the scientific academic process of accumulating and attempting to refine. It's like the act of figuring out between ourselves. And then it's almost like this something else that comes out is like the insistence of certain themes or patterns or so ways of making sense, ways of dialoguing as almost their own categories just through the repetition of it. That's like a not so much a product, but a product, like an outcome, because then that can inform the next engagement. So something like that tends to be. Then I mean, the more that material can then be shared, it's like a tool or like a that can then facilitate the. But I think having this having it all ground out in the dialogue itself is really productive and important for exactly the way that Larry reads Platonism. It's like inquiry as the substitute good that can organize other goods without involving the assumption to being the highest good. So we can like we spoke about meditation. It's like, okay, what place does meditation have? It's like a space where you can consider. I mean, even what you just said now, like it's a space where we consider the academic output of the paper or the. But it's like it's a. Well, I don't know, like this channel, not so, but the form itself. If you look at like Joe Rogan, it's increasing power and cultural or social capital. This like mode of information exchange that Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message kind of thing, and the sense that we are getting more into like an audio phase of information exchange, just culturally, there's something there as well. But that's those are the directions that provoked by those questions. I know for myself, I would probably benefit from being a bit more constrained in terms of like writing project. But and then the last thing I'll say is also like and I kind of joked about it in the message on the group before this. It's like there's a lot of freedom that comes from like a distance to an institutional thing, but then I find myself like considering stuff like OnlyFans ministry. It's like so there's there's a certain like norms and regulative functions that proximity to institutions have, where like there's quite a wild experimental possibility or subjection to propensity outside of those regulative norms and yeah. Avile and Sipo, you guys look like you're in heaven.
Oh,
Oh,
don't
why?
say that. No.
Oh, somebody paid my rent for the next year. I might. Until then, until then, no. I'm thinking deeply about this question of the product of education. And I think one of the things, perhaps we mentioned them and I might have missed it, but one of the things, obviously, we're not talking about the type of education that has a obvious outcome. Like obviously, if we make a doctor, the product is quite obvious. We're trying to sustain someone's health. But once we've moved to something a bit more nuanced, like the humanities, something about changing you as a person, and then we throwing you back amongst people is gonna change the people around you as well. Because people don't just learn through what they told; they also learn by just witnessing a person live their life. And if you can, we read these things, whatever, however we want to call them, whatever we want to phrase them as philosophical texts, what's more call it. At the end of the day, we read these words that change us, then we become this product that has been changed. And then all of a sudden, I remember I experienced this firsthand, like when I first went home after honors, I just could not fit in the same way I did. Everything looked different. Things I never cared about were suddenly a problem. And then they just come like I used to call everybody else cheese boy, and now everybody else is calling me cheese boy because I'm complaining about the way people are doing things and what. There's that. You are the product that changes, but because you are a product that isn't stationary, that goes out into the world, then it starts to cause a bigger chain reaction. Starts to cause a chain reaction because it's gonna end up influencing the culture of the family, and it's gonna end up. It becomes far more impactful than it seems in the beginning. Well, I mean, the same thing can happen when you're starting to be a doctor, but I feel it's more limited. It's more limited to a practice that you can become a good doctor without ever having that happen to you.
Yeah. Like that line of thought
Mm.
where it gets there's like a challenge where it's like, okay, that enactment, that like you realizing that you have been opposed in a way that has been productive to your own development, then it's like how you conceive the project that you're involved in when you are now freed from a master, you're freed from an authority. So it's like you're not being given a mission, then what is your mission? It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like the uh, how do you determine that? Like what determines? Because then it's like because
The Terminator that killed John Connor.
Yeah, I don't know.
What am I doing now?
the more I'm here, weirdly doing this philosophy degree, the more I'm like suspicious of claims like this. Like
Mm,
there's like a suspicion about like this philosophy is like the highest science or something like that, like the thing that everybody ought to do at least once in their life.
mhm.
Like we should get the doctor to do like a course in the humanities just for like a month so that he gets like something. I'm wondering whether it's just not like
Uh,
the
self-soothing method.
yeah, seems like only people that are arguing for it are philosophers. So it seems pretty seems pretty terribly biased. And I don't know. Maybe again, maybe I've just been reading too much Wittgenstein of recent, but like he has this thing about like ways of life and there being like many ways of life. And maybe there's just like many ways of life. Like it's not for everybody. Doesn't have to be for everybody. It's for some people. Others don't do it.
And, mm.
Sounds
Yeah.
sounds okay.
No, I wouldn't
It's a
disagree with. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. But
yeah.
but we can't. I'm sure none of us can dispute that
Mm,
something happened to us,
mm.
and then for sure, because something happened to us, something happened to the people we were around.
Yeah, I wonder
Mm.
like whether that something is like good. Like
Yeah, see that I don't know. That I can't say.
there's like a this I don't know. There's been like a line I can't remember like what philosophy is like a blessing, like something like gifted unto you by like the gods. And then like there's like this like other like very like skeptical attitude in like Wittgenstein and like Nietzsche and like people like those where it's like a sickness, like just like the sickness. And like now you
Yeah.
just got like sickness.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know whether it's like a sickness or like a blessing. I can't tell.
Mm.
Like I have a friend who they studied some philosophy in undergrad, and then this like huge reaction against it, realizing that like he didn't get any of the skills to uh make money, survive in the market. So then it's like
Yeah.
this was like, what did I benefit from that? But then we relate and we have conversations, and it's this orientation that it it feeds him, and there's an appetite there for it, and it breaks certain deadlocks in like way of being. But then I think more to what we were the 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 difficulty is then in uh, coming to terms, I guess, with the contentless nature of essentially the thing being proposed or the mode. It's like, because there's always this like call to uh, I would use the language like to positivize it in some way when it functions via its negativity, and then that negativity is like very hard to account for besides just its insistence. So then it's just like the insistence and the presence of the subject is like is it's is as much as one's going to be able to, and then something will strike up, and then it will seem that philosophy functioned very positively here, but it it only did so because it had this proximity to well, like a real void, like so then that's where Hadley, we need to continue to watch you as you flirt with those nothingnesses.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, two things that have come up, like the Sipo was pondering around time and Kant, and then Hadley, I think also this I think it's we've used the word like valences of nothingness, or it really, but like I'm struggling for the words now, but like orientations toward, or where, yeah, there's potentially something to gather around there. It's definitely been a part of this as well. But remember the answer that Avida gave us, which is that it's so that you can be a friend and so that you can alienate other people. Yeah. Ish. There.
I've been
Anyone want? Yeah.
thinking like my work. I've been so trapped thinking about virtue the whole time. Like virtue, like from all directions. Basically, the things we've been talking about, I thought it would be easier to just keep writing about the things we've been talking about. that way I won't have to start from scratch. But the more I read about it, sometimes I end up doubting the entire thing, but tying back again to the product thing, there's something about the idea of excellence, and then understanding there's this thing, excellence, and then, depending how you look at it, like if we take the Aristotelian approach and we look at it in terms of function, and suddenly when you look at things around, well, this could go in both directions. You can see things, it can go in a very bad direction or in a very good direction. A very good direction would be like you see the potential for everything to become excellent, and then you want to cultivate the excellence. The other direction is you just fall into despair, the hopelessness, the hopelessness of it all, when you realize that shit, nothing lives up to this excellence thing. And it's the thing that brought me to the problem of rather not the problem, the whole thing of time, where like in the moment you can reach it, in that moment, possibly if you do reach it for that one moment. But as soon as that moment is gone, you have to now get back to working, to getting this thing either back to excellence, or am I making sense? It seems like excellence itself is a fluctuating thing that you either become enslaved by your obsession to want to keep things in a constant state of excellence. And at times you can't tell whether that's liberating or it's suffocating, because at the end of the day you end up not being able to just live normally. You can't live normally because you feel like you have to live up to this excellence.
I think
Some days you put it down and then guilt just comes to you. You're like, shit. So it's like, you don't know. It's the thing that Hadley said about some things being like a curse or a sickness, that made me think of it. I was like, fuck. Yeah, a blessing or a sickness. I'm like, that's how I think about virtue. I can't tell anymore because I can't find it.
You're not getting it twisted. Like I wonder
Come
if
again?
I wonder if you're not getting it twisted. I wonder if the excellence is not like in flux, like the timelessness of it that you're doing, like the timelessness of it, like you want to like see these things as perfect, and then like you watch them degenerate, and you like need to repair them to put them back together. Like I wonder if excellence is not in flux, but like the flux is the problem. Like the excellence is like not in time. We're in time, and
Yeah,
since
we're in time.
There's nothing excellent in time. There's just it's just stuff that comes to be, it passes away, it changes, right? It's in becoming.
It's just like boom. It's like that first moment you make that cup, like it's done. And then as soon as you're done making that cup, it's ass from that point on. It's just getting just becoming worse. It's becoming worse. It's becoming worse. But there seems to be a thing, and I don't know, this could be an assumption. This could be an assumption. And I don't know, like I don't know if I'm seeing it or I'm projecting it, but there seems to be a thing about practicing that in things that now suddenly makes you want to keep practicing it in yourself. If I'm making sense, like the more you try and make other things excellent, now you're becoming habituated in such a way that you need excellence, and now you try to apply it to yourself. But that's when it really gets confusing. As a really when you start applying it to the human being, which is the problem we have in any case. The problem we have in any. That's when it gets really confusing, and then you fall into despair again because you're like, "What the hell am I doing? What the hell am I even doing?" Bro, that's the problem I'm having right now in my life. Like, what the hell am I even doing? Is this even worth it? And then I start again.
Yeah.
Right.
There's it's like a slightly different frame, but it might apply, it might not. But like I was hearing or listening, it's almost like excellence is like this. Okay, he has just a I think it's from Lacan as well. It's as we 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 all want a master, but we want a master whom we can dominate, or we like who we can. So we want a master. We want a master that we can like overcome, or so it's like you posit this excellence,
But
and you want
it's
to
not, bruh.
exceed it, or but you
So
almost like you.
it brings us back to our problem earlier in the year when it seems like you need virtue in order to learn virtue. It brings you back to that problem. Looks like I need this thing in order to get this thing. But then why would I want to get it? You get what I'm saying? Why would I want to get it if I have the thing?
Maybe that's a good way of looking at it. Maybe you need the thing to get the thing, but maybe instead of thinking of it as like a lack or something like that, you can think about it as a potential, right? You need the potential to acquire virtue to actually acquire virtue, but you don't have the potential to have virtue. You only have the potential insofar as it's actualized.
That does make it easier to think about.
Well,
I wonder, you see now, I found comfort. I wonder now how tomorrow's going to. I wonder.
Don't.
I found comfort in what Hedley said, but I wonder what tomorrow's going to be. A new problem will rise. And I was like, I'm going to be like, shit, this again.
I wonder if that's I'm sorry to interrupt that. I'm not sure that's a bad the new problem arising sounds like it's part of the process. Like it's part of what happens. The other part about like the sickness and the blessing thing that I think I left out was reading a lot of Phaedrus this year. And like there's a part in Phaedrus where Plato talks about like the mania or the madness, and he talks about like how not all madness is a bad thing. The underlying assumption that like the sickness or like the madness is like a bad thing is maybe not too useful. Like there's
finally happening. You're evolving into guru head. It's finally happening. You're evolving. I've been telling you for years when you used to come to class in Rome. But hey, you gotta evolve into a guru one of these days.
I don't know.
You're giving you
weird, man. Like this has been like such a refreshing and useful conversation because like the academic space is like not like, I mean, I love the place that I'm in and I love studying here and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily productive for like these sorts of questions, right? Like, you tell someone you want to think about nothing, and like they like, you know, like, what are you talking about? Or like, you think that like you're coming to like this like PhD program with like other like people that are going to be interested in like sort of metaphysics and like questions about this, and it's like, it's not bad that they're not. It's just like they're interested in different stuff, and like the stuff that, you know, the academy wants at the moment is like digestible, reasonable papers that can be easily expressed to others, and that's not necessarily always possible in ventures like unfortunately. It's not a bad thing. Like, it's important to be able to express yourself and to get your point across clearly in 10 pages or less, but you know, if you need to publish a journal article 10 pages or less, right? Like, say what you need to say and let it be, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's different, I think. Like, and that's like why the question of like this like pedagogical question of like what the educational framework ought to be, and like what the product of education ought to be and stuff like that. It's like, it's interesting because it's like, do we, I don't know, do we go for these like heavily refined, short, digestible, uh, thought through things where like we put the clear thoughts on a page, or do we like go through this like messy trudging through the waters, sort of like trying to find our way uh, in just pure confusion, and like see where we end.
What we
Yeah.
hit.
There was that I'm forgetting where it was, but the when you said clear, like I thought of the line that said the those who know are erring or are in error. Those in the know are in error. Those something like that. But I can't, I don't know where it is. The yeah. Yeah. The for sure.
This is nice.
I think there's a rhyme and a reason for things. I'm usually the person defending the academy, so there's a reason they do things the way they do. If you let a first year student run wild, what you end up is incoherent. Right. So those short digestible formats are supposed to hone them into using a particular skill set, right? Is to learning, it's teaching them to pivot in certain ways within a certain okay, bifurcate out for me, keep the flow the same. Right. Once you've mastered that, longer formats open up, right? So you can do a bit more play, but you're so constrained. And then the moment you get to postgraduate study, you can start doing other things to express the same idea that you've been carrying. Now you can pivot, you have different perspectives. What I'm trying to come back to is the idea that the product of a channel like yours is the pivot. That's what I think essentially the humanities are trying to get us to do. I, as the subject learning, right, I am changing in very particular. I am being split into such that I am able to maintain a conversation with myself, right? And that conversation with myself could be a meditation, right? It could be reading something and having to write an essay, and then going through several drafts to try and get the essay in a particular flow for a teacher, right? Once I get all these skills, I can apply them to other needs. So formats, I don't think I'm saying anything. Everybody.
With you.
The formats are doing something, And our return, once having touched on other mediums, back to the format, is to leave the format and the understanding for somebody else to move up the ladder and do the same. So that.
Yeah, that's useful. That's like a super useful way of looking at it. I think it makes a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's less abyssal.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. Shall we leave it there? Does anyone have a burning last word?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope.
Nope.
Are we
Nope.
back to doing this on the regular?
Yeah, I think so. There were a few themes that came up. There's the cunt and time. There's the praxis of the abyss, the negativity, or the valences of nothing, given an orientation toward nothing. And then the one last one is this, and what you were bringing up at the end, Sipo, this, and it then continued, but thinking about the way that the authorities that we authorize structure what we then do. So like the positing of the I mean the example that was there that kind of fits was like excellence and then failing at it and then somehow like noticing this repetition and then thinking about how we can, I don't know if it's like a soften, but I think it was also like a major theme in this paper. It's like this shifting into the mode of it's not so much the goal but the aim. So then it's like somehow enjoying the repetition without feeling that, without repeating the last.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking that there is an excellence in continuously aiming for excellence every time you fall for something about that is an excellence in time. Something about that.
There's a line in the Phaedrus that I've been really enjoying that I can't remember off by heart. And they're talking about the beautiful at some point. And then I think Socrates, Phaedrus questions Socrates or something, and he asks like whether it's possible. And then Socrates says, no, but the very attempt to try is beautiful itself.
Yeah.
Like we can never excellence, but like the attempt to achieve excellence itself.
Yeah. I think it might be connected to that theme that I'm locating by you, Hadley, with this like I think there's a certain skill of grieving that's like, oh, it isn't how I was prefiguring it. It isn't how I was thinking it is. I need to lose that. There's a real loss in that. It's like a grieving that. But then there is there's somehow the enjoyments of the fact that there isn't anything there, and you like repeating toward. But there's something that's going to be endlessly negative about, but the negative has potential about what's being aimed at. But it's, you can't sell that thing or that orientation. It's like that's
Maybe that's
it's
a
like
good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing. Keeps it uncorrupted.
Yeah, even like what Avila was saying about like the pivots and like the academic process, like giving you these pivots, like through the essay writing and stuff like that was just like good perspective again. Because like through this term, like all I've like a large amount of what I've learned is to like drop standards, like to like just like drop the expectation that like I'm gonna produce like this essay, the essay, and just produce an essay, right? Like
Yeah.
just write something coherent, structured, hand it in, and move along. And you'll have learned
Yeah.
something. Like you've like learned something along the way. And it's like this like I don't know, I've been like seeing it alongside like other people. It's like the people that are really good at it have become like really good at the ability to just like let go in that way. Like just go.
Yeah.
Yes, time to write this and it'll be what it is and that's perfect. Right. Like
Yeah. 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 There's definitely we hate that. We hate death. We hate that because you limit the I mean when you keep it open it's like there's all this potential, you know, like oh it could be so good. It could be oh maybe like it's gonna be like yeah. And then
it's
But
you're
why
like
do
no
we stop? Why do we stop? You know, we could just hand it in and then keep going. But the thing is,
yeah.
there's a part of us that did it for that guy. So I'm like, yeah, take it. And
Yeah, I
then a
think
part of us, bruh,
that's where Hadley's question of the product is really like if you really understand that you are the product of the
product,
process, your process, then you're going to be looser
oh,
or you're going to be less anxious about your output.
and there's like something about like that like even just thinking about it, like I've got these notes up like all over the house about like writing because it's just been so writing intensive this term. Like and there's like not only like you like the product, it's like your self-expression is important. Like just the ability to like express yourself and like just do that itself something valuable. Like
Yeah.
before you express yourself, you haven't. And then once you have, there's like this like concrete entity that is like an extension of you that you've managed to like somehow like birth into being. And that in itself is quite wonderful. It's quite a
And you want it to be an alien. You want it to be an alien.
yeah, sure.
An
Why
alien. You want it to be alienating as well.
not?
Hadley, I'm excited to um I get the sense that you like developing this mode of like high productivity. I'm excited to see. I'm understanding that it's going to be labor. Sipo, have you started a PhD?
yeah, I started August.
Okay, you as well. Okay,
It's
okay.
I got the same pressure. Shit, the three of us have the same pressure because we have to hand in a paper to publish in January. So the shit you're complaining about, I should be taking note of. I should be taking note. Then I shouldn't be
January's
aiming for
around the
something
bin.
that's come again.
January's around the bin, my guy.
It's like
Next week.
4 days away.
But to be fair to you, um,
Yeah.
the paper that I currently have an incomplete for, that I'm currently not doing because I'm talking to you guys, is also in my head due in January. Like I've got like notes like right next to me that says like you will have this paper in on Monday. It's like
Yeah.
if you're unhappy with it or if you are happy with it, the paper will be handed in.
Yeah, on Monday. Yeah, I think that's the solution.
Yeah, no, those come and go for me.
Yeah.
It just never ends. It never ends. You just have to abandon this. You just have to drop it and walk away.
Well, I think the important thing, especially I guess because like here it's at least coursework. Like there's like 2 years of coursework, which is like I mean it's its own struggle. But like I think the benefit of it is like you learn that you're never done with a project. Like you hand it in, you get it back, you get some feedback, and you go, I could probably improve it in these ways. And so like maybe the lesson to learn is just like you'll never be done. Like
Mm,
finish the thing. You can always like edit, rewrite, make something better later on when you have the wherewithal.
that,
But it's important to just like get through it. We had these it's not pertinent for the recording, but we had these essays this term with this guy, Dr. Winfield, who also I think taught Larry at some point, and we were doing a course on Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, and each of the essay topics was absolutely mad, like insane. Each of them was 1/3 of the Critique of Pure Reason, and we read through the Critique of Pure Reason in 3 months. So like the first question was like write a 10-page essay on the transcendental aesthetic, basically, and like why Kant begins with the transcendental aesthetic. The second was like discuss the transcendental analytic and how the logic relates to the second analogy, which is like all the way at the end. And then the final paper for the course that like I just did, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna write this, was a 20-page paper, and it was like discussing Kant's discussion of transcendental illusion in the dialectic, speak about how illusion features in each, like pick one argument from each section of the dialectic, and then discuss that in relation to the doctrine of method and Kant's critical endeavor as a whole. And it was like literally 20-page essay, and it was like 20-page double spaced, so like a 10-page essay. And the amount of content that we had to fit in that 10-page essay was, I would say, at least 352 pages. It was literally like the last like bit of the critique. And while I was doing it, I was like, there's no point in doing this. Like, no one will ever get this essay perfect. Like, it's impossible. Like, all of these essays just feel like they're just like set up to make you fail. And like, they probably are. But if you had to ask me to explain some of the stuff from the dialectic, I'd probably do a lot better of a job at it than if I hadn't done that writing.
Yeah.
And now that like I've just got the courage, like it's like been like this practice of like building up the courage to just do like slightly like insane things.
Like courage is a big one. Courage and like audacity almost. Like
Yeah.
I mean, even speak
Why
about
not?
being and yeah.
Yeah, why not write like a 10-page summary of like the last third of the critique of pure reason?
Yeah. I'm gonna pop the recording now as we talk shop. Remember, alienate your friends.